A drone incursion into Russian airspace triggers alarms in Moscow, while thousands of kilometers away, the diplomatic dance in Istanbul belies the chilling rhetoric of war readiness echoing from London, as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaks of war-fighting readiness. This is not fiction. It is our whole, raw, real, and perilously complex. Today we are going to uncover the enigma behind geopolitics and why Ukraine's drone, Britain's rhetoric, and China's accusation matter more than we think. I am Ibrahim Umarwase. This is Connecting the Dot. As Ukraine intensifies its use of long-range drone strike deep inside Russian territory, the war that once seemed locked within Eastern Europe's front lines now shows signs of evolving, spilling, and perhaps even reshaping the global order.
Thank you so much. Dear Gitan, thank you first of all for invitation. Thank you for support. This is a special moment. On the one hand, Russia has launched its summer offensive, but on the other hand, they are being forced to engage in diplomacy. And this is both a challenge and a real opportunity for us all, a chance to try to end this war. First, as before, our top priority is supporting our defense, and I'm grateful for all the support packages and for every investment in weapons production in Ukraine and for the development of production in your countries as well. Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical solutions. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. That is what will push it toward diplomacy. And when Russia takes losses in this war, it's obvious to everyone that Ukraine is the one holding the line, not just for itself, but for all of Europe.
Ukrainian drones have reportedly struck military industrial facilities in regions far removed from the battlefield.
Там полыхает все. О, Господи, еще раз, девочки, еще. Просто черная.
Targets not merely symbolic but strategic. These incursions demonstrate Kyiv's growing technological reach and psychological audacity. But they also raise an ominous question: how will a nuclear-armed Russia respond to being touched on its own soil? War today is no longer confined to trenches and tanks. It is layered psychological. What we are witnessing is not just a military conflict, it is a clash of worldview. And the drones flying over Russian soil may just be the beginning of a far more dangerous chapter. Let us step back, not emotionally, but surgically, and analyze what does that mean to the world. When Ukraine sends drones hundreds of kilometers into Russian territory, it is saying three things at once. We are not afraid. We are not weak. And certainly, we know where it hurts. But here is what most of us don't realize. These strikes are not just about blowing up fuel depots. They are psychological warfare. A blow to Russian invisibility, a disruption to Moscow's strategic rhyme. And they force a dilemma. If Russia responds too aggressively, it risks international escalation. If it does nothing, it appears weak. That tightrope, it is exactly what Ukraine wants Russia to walk. But be careful, tightropes snap. For Moscow, these strikes are more than provocations. They are viewed as the West's invisible fingerprints. The language has grown sharper, the tone more brittle. Yet, just as the sky burns with drone trails, a door quietly cracks open in Istanbul. In a world of contradictions, peace and war often walks hand in hand. While missiles fly, Russia and Ukraine have resumed peace negotiations in Istanbul, hosted under the cautious gaze of Turkey, a nation caught between NATO alliance and historical ties to both parties. Is this the breakthrough the world has been waiting for, or simply another photo ops dressed in diplomatic optimism? Sources close to the talks describe them as tentative, with both sides holding maximalist positions. Russia demands neutrality and territorial concessions. Ukraine insists on full sovereignty and post-war security guarantees. Neither demand is small. Both are soaked in blood. But one truth remains: every moment spent at the table is a moment not spent in the trenches, and that in itself is progress. Meanwhile, across the channel, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has declared that the United Kingdom is moving to war-fighting readiness.
And today, following through on this review, I want to set out 3 fundamental changes that we're going to deliver. First, we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength. Now, Britain has the finest servicemen and women in the world. We're showing them the respect that they deserve by delivering the biggest armed forces pay rise in 20 years and by pledging today that we will end the hollowing out of our armed forces. We'll build a fighting force that is more integrated, more ready, more lethal than ever, backed by a stronger strategic reserve, fully trained and ready to mobilise at any time. Second, everything we do will add to the strength of NATO. As we step up to take greater responsibility for our collective defence, the NATO alliance means something profound. That we will never fight alone. It is a fundamental source of our strategic strength. That's why our defence policy will always be NATO first, something that's written through this review. The transformation we are driving in our defence must add up to Britain's biggest contribution to NATO since its creation, so that when we're building new capabilities at home, we are making our allies safer too, strengthening Europe and strengthening our bridge to the US as Britain's first partner in defence. Third, we will innovate and accelerate innovation at a wartime pace, so we can meet the threats of today and of tomorrow as the fastest innovator in NATO. Now, this doesn't mean replacing people or hardware. Quite the opposite. It means learning the lessons of Ukraine, which I've discussed many times with President Zelensky, to ensure that every capability we have works seamlessly together. Drones, destroyers, AI, aircraft, each different branch of our armed services fully integrated to create...
The phrase, once reserved for distant Cold War briefing, now echoes across Parliament and media headlines. This is no idle declaration. This declaration isn't just rhetoric, it is positioning. It signals to NATO, to adversaries, and to domestic audience that Britain is back in the ring. But here is the deeper question. Is Britain preparing for war or simply preparing for a war that look more like 1940 than 2020? Geopolitical fault lines are shifting. The old idea of peace by proximity no longer work. What Europe is facing isn't just a Ukrainian crisis, it is a crisis of order. Analysts suggest it also signals Britain's pivot to a posture of hardened deterrence, possibly in anticipation of future confrontation, not only with Russia, but in a world increasingly defined by geopolitical unpredictability. Military drill have expanded, defense budgets are rising, the old empire is digging in. But to what end? Is this readiness a shield for peace or a prophecy of deeper entanglement? From Beijing come a sharper rebuke. China has accused the United States of bearing primary responsibility for the war between Russia and Ukraine.
The United States bears a major responsibility for the outbreak of the war and the continuation of the war. But of course, the United States has a responsibility to work its efforts and play its part for an early ending of the conflict. We urge the United States to concentrate on the ongoing diplomatic efforts and to stop this rather boring blaming game.
This argument is steeped in the language of power politics, that NATO expansion and Washington's military-industrial influence helped push Moscow into a corner. To Beijing, the Ukraine war is less a local crisis and more a symptom of unipolar arrogance. This view is not isolated. Across the global south, in Africa, Latin America, and part of Asia, there is growing skepticism of the Western narrative monopoly. In Pan-African cycle, question persists. Why does peace only become urgent when European borders are threatened? And why are some conflicts global news while others are global silence? The world now finds itself patched precautiously between drone strikes and peace talks, between rearmament and reconciliation. Ukraine's audacious strike proved it will not bow. Russia's deep memory and military muscle mean it will not forget. The West sharpens its swords. The East whispers of restraint and blame, and the global South, too long a spectator to imperial chess, now asks, what game is really being played? The coming week will be critical. A strike too far, a word too sharp, and we may slide closer to a larger war, ultimately World War III. But if diplomacy holds, if Turkey's table is not just symbolic, then history might look back to say this was the moment we pulled back from the edge. Let no nation rejoice too quickly in another's pain. Let no drone strike become routine. Let no soldier's death be dismissed as strategy. The time has come not for louder weapons, but wiser leaders. As Africans, as citizens of a fragile planet, we must watch this unfolding with sober eyes. Not for entertainment, but for understanding. Because if peace is not built in Ukraine, the winds of war will not respect anyone's border. And history will ask us all, when the world burned, did you fan the flame or did you carry water? With that, we come to the end of this episode of Connecting the Dots. This is the Voice of New Africa. I remain your brother, Ibrahim Umar Wasi. Let the dots begin to connect. Until next time.